Peaceful, easy feeling, but it was horrible. And we all had a nice laugh. I said, if you'd ever heard that, you'd have never hired me.
For decades, the world has celebrated Vince Gill as the gentle voice of American country music, 22 Grammys, a Country Music Hall of Famer, and since 2017, the steady voice of the Eagles. But what most people don't know is that behind that humble smile lives a man who has carried quiet disappointments, heartbreaks, and betrayals from the very artists he once respected. At 68, Vince finally let the truth slip out about 7 figures in the industry who shaped his journey not with love, but with wounds. The first name that shocked everyone was Garth Brooks. To the world, they were brothers in country. But Vince believed country music was a conversation between soul and sound, something tender and lived in. When Garth turned the genre into stadium fireworks, Vince didn't see evolution. He saw the heart of country being traded for spectacle. He once confided to a close friend, "We used to tell stories. Now we sell tickets." And then there was Shania Twain, whose success many celebrated as groundbreaking, while Vince saw it as the moment's sincerity was replaced with glitter, choreography, and chart strategy. He never hated these artists as people. What he despised was what they represented, the day country music forgot its roots, its quiet truth, its depth, its huck. In Vince's heart, country was never meant to be louder. It was meant to be truer. They say tension doesn't need to be spoken to be felt, and nowhere was that truer than between Vince Gill and Shania Twain. After a CMA banquet one evening, Vince quietly said, "She made country safe for people who don't even like country." It wasn't anger. It was disappointment. The two were never photographed together, never shared a stage, never exchanged polite praise. When Shania received her Lifetime Achievement Award in 2016, Vince wasn't in the audience. And when reporters asked why, he gave a gentle smile and said, "I don't fit in that show anymore." That one line carried the weight of an entire era closing. To him, Shania didn't just change the sound of country, she changed its identity. And then there was Billy Ray Cyrus, a name that sits differently in Vince's memory. When Achy Breaky Heart took over America in 1992, the world laughed, danced, celebrated. Vince didn't. He turned off the radio and said, "That's not country. That's marketing with a twang." He had spent his life writing about love that breaks slowly and hearts that heal unevenly. Billy Ray arrived with a mullet and choreography. To most people, it was harmless fun. To Vince, it was dignity slipping through Nashville's fingers. In a green room that year, he joked, "That song set country back 10 years, and the room laughed, but the truth hung in the air like smoke." Suddenly labels didn't want storytellers, they wanted performers. They didn't want substance, they wanted slogans. When Vince crossed paths with Billy Ray backstage in '94, he just nodded and kept walking. No handshake. No warmth. Just silence. And years later, when Miley Cyrus pulled country back into mainstream pop through shock and spectacle, Vince didn't criticize, didn't lecture, didn't argue. He simply shook his head and said, "They broke it. It was over." Kristofferson was the outlaw poet the world adored, but to Vince Gill, he was the one man who represented everything he could not accept in country music. Where Vince believed in discipline, care, and craftsmanship, Kristofferson walked on stage with a cigarette in his voice and whiskey in his bloodstream, forgetting lines and missing cues, yet somehow receiving standing ovations from crowds who called it soul. That burned Vince to the core. "Since when did sloppy become soulful?" he once muttered to a friend. The clash became open during a CMA rehearsal in the '90s. Kristofferson showed up late, stumbling his way through a sound check while everyone laughed it off like it was charming. Vince picked up his jacket and walked out, saying quietly but sharply, "I'm not watching another train wreck." After that, there were tributes for Cash, Willie, Waylon, legends Vince deeply respected, but never a tribute for Kristofferson hosted by Vince. Not once. When asked years later, he simply said, "I admire honesty, not sloppiness," and that was the end of it. Then came Jason Aldean, the modern hero to the new generation, and the fifth name on Vince's list. But Vince didn't just dislike Aldean's music. He despised what it symbolized, country becoming a product, a lifestyle brand, a playlist of beers, boots, bonfires, and girls in denim shorts pretending to be storytelling. "Let's not call it country just because there's a pickup truck in the video," Vince told Rolling Stone, and everyone knew exactly who he meant. When Aldean headlined the CMA Fest in 2013, Vince didn't show up. When asked why, he said, "If that's the future, I'll stay in the past." That wasn't bitterness. Sixth on Vince Gill's list wasn't even a country singer, and that's exactly why his name hit like a lightning strike: Kanye West. Yes, the self-proclaimed genius, the cultural titan, the man who built himself into a myth. To most people, Kanye and Vince exist in different worlds. But to Vince, Kanye represents the very thing he fears most in music: ego louder than craft. Vince grew up believing music was a prayer, something you approach with humility, respect, and gratitude. Kanye made music into a mirror, a stage where the spotlight mattered more than the song. When Kanye stormed the stage and interrupted Taylor Swift at the 2009 VMAs, Vince was reportedly watching from home and whispered, "This is what happens when ego kills art." And when a reporter later asked Vince in 2016 about how the industry had changed, he answered, "Back in my day, you earned respect by listening first." Everyone in the room knew exactly who he meant. Kanye, to Vince, isn't just a musician. He's a symbol. A symbol of fame without foundation, noise without soul, spectacle without sincerity. They've never met. They've never exchanged a word. But Vince once said when asked about collaborating outside of country, "Not with someone who needs the stage more than the song." A gentle sentence that landed like a hammer. Because to Vince, Kanye's world is too loud, too self-absorbed, too hollow to hold truth. And truth, to Vince, is Huck. The last name on Vince Gill's list is the one that actually cut close to the bone: Travis Tritt. Their tension didn't come from charts, awards, or interviews. It started in a room full of musicians in 1997 at a Nashville charity event. Vince, speaking softly to a circle of players, said, "Some guys play outlaw, but can't write a verse." Tritt heard it. He walked across the room, stood directly in front of Vince, and stared. No yelling. No words. Just two men, two beliefs, two worlds colliding in silence. Everyone laughed except Travis. He didn't smile, didn't blink. He just stood up and walked straight toward Vince backstage. He didn't say a word. He just stared at him, eye to eye, with the kind of silence that isn't quiet at all. A silence that cuts. From that moment on, the temperature between them never warmed again. Vince was precision, grace, restraint. Travis was fire, volume, and whiskey-soaked defiance. They were two different philosophies of country music wearing the same boots, and neither one was willing to step back. When fans in the early 2000s begged for a collaboration, Vince simply said, "We're not the same kind of honest." That line told the whole story. After that, their silence became its own legend. At award shows, they'd pass each other like ghosts, no nod, no handshake, nothing but distance. Vince, ever the gentleman, never used Travis's name, but he would speak about artists who mistake rebellion for talent. Travis, proud and unapologetic, once shrugged and said, "I don't need to impress anyone who doesn't get what I do." And if you're wondering whether time softened anything, it didn't. Not even a little. That stare from 1997 is still hanging in the air, frozen like a photograph nobody framed but everyone remembers. And there you have it. The 7 names Vince Gill never forgave. Now the question is yours: which one shocked you the most? Tell your truth in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, because the next chapter of country music's hidden history is just getting started.